Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wind Down Wednesdays. I'm your host, Paula Taylor, and this is episode 117. Today, we are going to talk about building intentional community and calling in your soul tribe, and I have an exciting announcement around that. First, I just want to say I'm having a little bit of vocal hoarseness, so I apologize in advance if I have to clear my throat or if I sound a little scratchy or hoarse, but I wanted to go ahead and do this show. I'm excited about it. Let's get into this topic. And I talked about this a little bit last week. Last week's show was a great show. It was a little bit longer than they usually are. This one might end up being as well, but it was a really good show. I just listened to it again yesterday in podcast form. And so I alluded to this a little bit at the end of the show last week, this idea of building intentional community. And what I talked about a little bit is that pretty much every community we have, of course there's exceptions, but most of the places we're in community in our lives revolves around this mind space, this mental connection, which, as we've been discussing over the last few weeks, is an ego space. The mind space is linked to the ego. So in most facets of our lives, we are meeting people in that ego space. And what does that mean? That means the ego, there's a lot of fear within the ego. So the things that we encounter a lot in life, competition, that's an ego-based kind of, I could just say patriarchy here. And if you want to learn more about that, highly recommend Sonia Renee Taylor's book, The Body is Not an Apology, talking about kind of hierarchies. So hierarchies, systems where you have to move up a level. And sometimes the way you do that is by, as we use the phrase, throwing someone else under the bus, right? This idea that there are scarce resources, we are competing for them, and so we have to one up each other. That is an ego-based kind of patriarchal and sort of capitalist idea. And that is what most of our interactions are built on. And even things like community that's built around common interest, that is still in the mental space. And one of the things that came to me here is this idea of religion, right? Beliefs are held in the mental space. We have not really been taught how to access belief in our body. I mean, that's one of the reasons I do the work I do is to access that. So, and again, of course, there's exceptions to these, but most of the spaces where we are in community are in that mental space. Whether you're meeting physically or virtually, that doesn't matter at this point. It's a meeting of the minds. And the problem with that, again, is that the mind is based in the ego. And so it creates a lot of fear, and it creates this feeling of not being safe. We're going to get into that quite a bit more today. So when I'm talking about building intentional community, I'm talking about building community that is not based in that ego space. So let's talk a little bit about, because I'm using the word intentional, what do I mean by that? Because that is a big switch beyond the ego space or out of the ego space, that word intention or intentional. So let's talk about what that really means. So most of the time in our daily lives, the things we are doing are unconscious or subconscious. We're kind of running on autopilot, right? If you get in your car to drive to an errand or work or whatever, you're not really thinking much about that because it's something that you've done a million times. You're kind of running on autopilot. So that's unconscious or subconscious. And that is a huge amount of the things we do. And some of that is by design, because if you had to think about every single, you don't have to think about getting your heart to beat. It does it unconsciously, automatically, right? Then the level beyond that is kind of the conscious mind. And you might think, well, what's the difference between doing something consciously and doing something intentionally? So let's talk about that a little bit. So unconscious, subconscious is like, it's not even in your awareness. It's kind of a background program that's running behind the scenes. So when you're conscious about something, that means it's come into your awareness. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are controlling it. you're aware of it. So like when you start to notice patterns in your behavior and you're like, oh, I do this a lot, and you notice that you're kind of reacting, a lot of times the first step to trauma healing is becoming conscious, is coming into that awareness. So that, that is kind of a step beyond being in the unconscious, being conscious of something. But a lot of times when you're conscious of something, you're still in that ego space, right? And maybe you're recognizing it, maybe you're starting to develop this kind of observer self that we use in meditation a little bit, but you're kind of reacting. You're not responding. You're not creating. You're sort of along for the ride. Even when things are conscious, you're not, I don't want to use the word control. That's what keeps coming to me. You're not intentionally setting things. Wow. Okay. Don't worry. I can explain this. I promise. It's funny. I've gone through this so many times in my mind, and then right before I got really nervous, and sometimes when that happens, it's because it ends up I'm going to talk about something that I didn't even really plan to. So essentially, conscious just means you're aware of this. You're not necessarily in control of it. It might still be kind of happening automatically, but you're aware of it. And of course, I'm going to talk about this in terms of energy and vibration, because that is where I live. But that is what is so important that I think a lot of people don't realize. It's one of the reasons I wrote my book, Spiritual Integration, is that everything is energy work. Whether you are aware of it or not, everything you do is energy work. So either you are completely unconscious and you're just getting buffeted around by other people's energy, or you're throwing out energy without any consciousness about what you're doing, or maybe you're conscious of it, but you're not necessarily intentionally creating it. Creating, that's the word. It's not control, it's creation. So you might be conscious, like you might go into a space and feel unsafe, and that's because the energy somehow is kind of coming into your space. Maybe you don't have a boundary up, maybe you're getting triggered. You might be aware of that, but you're not creating a different situation for yourself. You're still kind of subject to the whims of the world around you. Let's put it that way. So the difference between being conscious and being intentional energetically is huge. All of energy work is essentially intention. It's based around intention. And we talk a lot of times on the show about setting an intention for the highest good. That is, I think, the easiest way to be intentional about the way your energy is affecting other people, especially, is to say for the highest good. So what does that do? Let's talk a little bit about what that does to the actual energy, because the universe is energy. Everything is energy. That is my view of things, whether we can see it or sense it or not. And as you start to work with it, absolutely, you will start to sense it and you'll start to notice. So what happens when we are intentional, vibrationally, energetically, is that we're taking all of these sort of seemingly chaotic vibrations, because even when you're conscious, things can still be really chaotic, even within your own field. And we are aligning them. We are calling them in a way that is coherent, that is resonant, that is harmonious. You've heard me use a lot of these terms before, that is expansive. So essentially what happens with intention is that we have the opportunity to harness this energy and to direct it, to create something that is different than maybe what has come before. And so that is what I am talking about when I'm talking about creating intentional community, building intentional community. So rather than kind of the status quo, which is that we exist in this mental space, and maybe, you're in a group because you all like to play soccer, or you all like to read books, or you all believe the same things about, whatever it is, that is all still in the ego space. And it is not really possible to be intentional in that ego space, because intentionality comes from alignment. Intentionality comes from spiritual integration. So when your energy is aligned with your body and the mental space, and you've moved into that intuitive space, that is where intention comes from. And the difference energetically is ginormous. That's the only word that came. Gigantic, enormous, immense. It's the difference between going down a river and, maybe you're conscious. So you have a life vest on, but you're getting buffeted around by rocks, or intentionally putting a canoe in the river and then directing yourself through the rapids in a way that is intentional, that is thought out, that is creative. So building intentional community is, in my opinion, the single most important way that we are going to change that chaotic system that someone created long ago that we've all been kind of indoctrinated into. Because if you think about it, even our interests a lot of times came, I like soccer because my parents like soccer and their parents like soccer or whatever. I was raised Catholic, so a lot of people, I did not choose to stay Catholic, but a lot of people do. So you can see how a lot of these things they're sort of passed down to us, right? It's a very arbitrary system. And sometimes what happens when you stop and you start asking yourself, like I did at 16, wait a minute, do I really believe this stuff that's happening in church? Does this resonate with me? Does this feel good in my body? Does it make sense? And for me, that answer was no. But a lot of times we don't even question that stuff. And more people are starting to question that. And so this idea of building intentional community, I think, is going to increase. We're going to see more people. People are doing this for sure. But I think that as we start doing this on a larger scale, that is how we actually change the whole system. And we're not going to get too far into that. Why am I talking about this today, you might ask? I mentioned that I had an announcement and we're going to get there. So it's been in my mind for a long time that it's time for me to start building community. And let me tell you what happens to most of us, and I've heard this, I've seen this reflected so many times in so many interactions with people. So I know when I say this stuff, I am not the only person who's been through this. So what happens when you start walking this spiritual path is that you start looking for a community, right? Just like we're social creatures, right? And you find out sometimes fairly quickly that this old model of this ego-based community does not work for spiritual work. It just doesn't work. And what happens is, you enter into a space, let's say, where people have common interests, and you get hurt because it is not a safe space, because it is still an ego-based space. And ego-based spaces are not safe. That's just inherent in how they're created because they're built on fear. That is what the ego is. So, like most people I know who are anywhere along this journey, and if you're listening to this, you are because you're listening to this or watching it. So I thought for a lot of years that if someone was interested in the same things I was interested in, because that's how we're raised, then that might be a safe space for me, that we might have a deeper connection. I was looking for a deeper connection. Everyone is looking for a deeper connection, whether they realize it or not. And I'm going to tell you how we create that. That is my goal here. So you're looking for a deeper connection. And based on the way we're trained, you think, well, if somebody has a common interest, then I'll find that deeper connection. And I cannot tell you how many times I got burned by that. I got hurt by that emotionally because I thought just because, someone else does energy work, they must have the same intention that I do. And it was not true. It's just because someone has the same mind interests as you does not mean that they are in the same intention as you, that they're in the same heart space as you are. And I learned that lesson multiple times till I finally kind of figured it out. And honestly, this might be the first time I've really put all of those things together and realized that's why that kept happening to me. So what happens next for many of us is that we go into a hermit phase. There's a reason there's a hermit card in the tarot, right? because when you're on this spiritual journey, at some point, you stop relating to the old ways of being. And the people even that you used to relate to no longer feel safe. They no longer feel safe for you. And so you sort of just turn inward and you walk this path alone for a little while, or a long while, depending on the person. And so I was in that hermit space, I would say, for at least 5 years. I mean, it's happened to me on and off, but I kind of just got to the point where I kept meeting people and thinking like, oh yes, we're connecting on this deeper level. And then I realized, nope, it's still an ego space thing. And again, I didn't have the words for it at the time, but now it's very clear to me that that's kind of what was happening. And I did in the last, I would say 5 years, I have started finding that deeper connection in spaces. I got involved in BioTouch, and I learned a lot about service and love and being unconditional with people. I got involved with Heart to Heart Sisters, which is originally was called Braveheart Women. And let me tell you, we're going to talk about that too. It takes a huge amount of courage to come into this deeper state of relationship, this heart-based relationship. And I learned so much from Heart to Heart Sisters and from Sarah Amos, who held that space so beautifully for so many years. And so from each of these interactions, I started realizing, what do I want? What is the community that I want? And there's always going to be something like Heart to Heart Sisters is amazing, but it's only for women. And that's not necessarily what I want. I want to be open to everyone. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about around safety. So it started coming to me, a little by little over time. What is the community I want to build? Because I'm going to have to build it. It doesn't exist anywhere that I've found so far. That's not to say it doesn't exist anywhere. It's just not, at a certain point, you start building something. And I've seen this coming for a long time, and I've even talked about it. And I'm going to talk a little bit about like why it took me so long and how so when you are doing something with intention, you cannot rush that. You have to find the safety in it. You have to find that heart-centered connection. You have to feel the intuitive alignment. You have to find the alignment. And that takes time. And that's another thing. We live in a society of rush, of hurry, of do it, of get it done, of action. And again, all of that comes from that ego space. So I started realizing the type of community I wanted to build. And then I had to figure out where to build it. We'll get into that a little bit. But the type of community that I am intentionally building is a community of safety, first and foremost. And for years, in all of my various professional roles, one of the things that I have heard the most from people is how safe they feel with me. And that's a huge compliment, and I accept that compliment. And the reason why is because I want to be safe. So I am creating safety because we build what we want, right? So I hold safe space because I want to feel safe. I now realize, I think it's the first ingredient to change is feeling safe. You can't be vulnerable if you don't feel safe. You can't come into that ease response in your body, which is where these releases happen in terms of healing, any kind of healing, physical, emotional, trauma, all of that. Safety comes first. So for all those years, when we were taught kind of how to create a safe space in massage, and then I would have, especially women in my ultrasound room, tell me I've never felt safe in a medical setting before, because I did exams that were, especially if you've been through trauma, we did vaginal ultrasounds, and if you've had sexual trauma, that whole idea of that is traumatic. So how do you build safety? Let's talk about that. And again, first of all, you set the intention that this is a safe space. That's the number one thing. Intention is everything in energy work. I set the intention that this is a safe space. But what does that really mean? What does safety really mean? And using that kind of same ultrasound idea, safety means there's no pressure. I'm not going to push you. Safety means there's no rush. I'm not going to hurry you. Safety means you make the choice about what you are willing to do, where you are willing to go. And if you're not ready to do something, then you don't do it. And you are not shamed about it. And that is the next big thing that I want to talk about is every single person I have talked to, whether it's professionally, personally, in the last, I would say 3 weeks at least, has brought up shame. And I think it is coming up right now because this is our time. This is our time to start releasing shame. And especially those of us who were raised in this kind of environment of so much shame. There's a lot of us now coming into this kind of midlife-ish era where we were raised with so much shame. And it's absolutely, it was traumatizing. It is affecting our lives. It's affecting our relationships, and we're ready to look at it. So the way that we release shame, the antidote to shame is vulnerability. But shame is a very good hider. It loves secrets. It loves to be hidden. So we have to shine a light on the shame. We have to see it. And then as we get vulnerable, we tell our story. Every time we tell our story, it releases a little more of that shame. But the only way to feel courageous enough to do that is to feel safe. And if you've watched this show, you know, this show has been on for 2.5 years now. And a lot of this journey for me personally has been about showing you over and over again that it can be safe to be vulnerable. It is scary AF, but it can be safe when you decide it is safe. Some of that, and that is intention, because I'm putting a lot of things way out in a place that maybe is not safe at all. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. But because I have set the intention to feel safe and to be committed to safety, then that gives me the courage to do that. And again, that is why I get so vulnerable on these shows. That's why I give you so many personal details of my life. It's because as I tell my story, I shine a light on shame. I am vulnerable. I release the shame, and you can do that too. But you need a place to be able to do that. So, safety. Number one, I am building an intentional community that is safe. That is safe for all. That is welcoming to all. I just set up my Google Maps for my new location. And I was so excited because there was a check mark for LGBTQIA plus friendly. And then there was a check mark for transgender safe space. Safety should not be conditional. Just like love should not be conditional. It's not love if it's conditional. Safety is for everyone. So my intentional community is safe for all. So how do we build this safe space, this heart-centered space? Because that is where this deeper connection comes. If you think about the body, the mind, I talked about this last week too. The mind is like your attic of your house, and you've got these 3 floors and a basement, but you're spending all the time in the attic. So as we come into the heart space, we deepen our connection. As we come fully into our body, we deepen our connection even more. And so for me, what that means is safety. It means being heart-centered. What does that mean? That means as much as we can, we'll never be perfect. We live in a space of non-judgment. We live in a space of unconditional love. We live in a space outside of that ego mind. And again, no one's perfect. When judgments come up, we recognize as we travel this path that they're really not about the person we're judging. They're really about ourselves. And we work through the trigger. And sometimes that happens in an uncomfortable way. But as you continue to intentionally create this space of safety, of heart-centeredness, of grounding, of being in the body, being connected to this earthly plane, it's kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? it's like a perpetual motion. Energy loves to be in flow. Energy loves to be in motion. And this is where manifestation comes from. When people talk about manifestation, they're talking about energetic alignments and coherence and harmony. They're talking about intention. So as we set intentions, the universe is like, oh, I can do that. I'm going to create this safe space for you because that is your intention. So that is why intention is everything. So for a long time, it's been in my mind to create this community, to build this community. And at first it was like, I got to be there. I've got to be in a space where I can really hold this. And part of that was actually finding help. Part of that was finding my own soul tribe. We're going to talk about that as well. Because when you start connecting to people on that deeper level, that is where and that might sound like one of those woo-woo terms that is popular, but I love that. Your soul tribe. What does that mean? That is a group of people that you are connecting with on a soul level, on a deep level, not in the ego space, in the heart space, in the intuitive space. And when I met my friend Michelle at Brightway Wellness, and she encouraged me to start teaching dimensional frequency expansion, DFE, in her space, I realized I had finally called in my soul tribe after all these years of kind of, starts and stops and being hurt and being a hermit. I had learned how to intentionally call in the people who were going to connect with me on that deeper level. And then I realized it was time to expand that beyond kind of the small venue that I've been in. So then I started where am I going to do this, right? Where am I going to offer this virtually? And that's why I've mentioned this a few times, and I never found a place that felt right. And then I realized why. So, I thought, I could make a Facebook group, or, I could do this on TikTok. There's all these kind of social media places. But the problem with most of those places is that it's very anonymous. That is how the internet has kind of been created, right? Like that's where the idea of trolls come from. You might not even be who you say you are on the internet, right? I could create a whole new identity and get some stock photos and, be whoever I want to be. So there was something about that didn't feel safe. Social media can be safe. It can be made safe. You can intentionally create, and I know some people who've done really good jobs on Facebook creating safe spaces, but it just didn't feel quite right to me, and I wasn't sure why. And then I did my rebirthing ceremony with my soul tribe, the beginning of our soul tribe, I'm hoping. And one of the things we were talking about was this idea of energetic exchange. I just redid my Reiki 1 attunement this weekend with my friend Michelle at Brightway Wellness. And we talked about it there as well, right? Like energy wants to be in flow. So when you're giving energy, the energy wants to kind of flow back and forth. And so there needs to be an exchange of energy for that energy to really be flowing freely. And as we were talking about this with my DFE goddesses, as I call them, and I was talking about how I wanted to build this community and I wasn't really sure and nothing really felt right. And one of my very wise goddesses said, the problem with those spaces is that the words she used are people have no skin in the game. There's not that energetic exchange. And this is an idea that took me a lot longer to come around to than I maybe would have liked. But I mentioned earlier this year I was taking a Money Mind master class with Rosemary Cunningham, who is one of those people who's created a beautiful space online, Winning Women. It's a networking space, but it's a very safe, heart-centered space. And I started to realize money is energy, right? Money is actually the energy of choice that we have chosen in society in terms of exchange. I don't know why I never thought about it in those terms. I mean, even when I was trained in Reiki 20 years ago, it was like you give Reiki and then they give you something. And it doesn't have to be money, but that's kind of what we've chosen as our chosen token of energetic exchange. And sometimes it's not, sometimes you trade or you barter. There's all sorts of different ways to do this. And as soon as she said that, I realized that is what was missing in these other spaces, was this energetic exchange. This idea that people who choose to join this community have to set their own intention to be in the community. I can set the intention for what the community is, and then I can ask you to hold that intention with me as you step into community. But what is your skin in the game? What is your impetus to do that? What is your investment? And so this is like really long story short. And again, I hope that if you're listening to this is not just like one long ad for my community. I mean, a little bit it is. I want you to join my community, but this is a template for any community anyone wants to build intentionally. I'm telling you what intentional community is, how I built it, what was important to me. You could insert anything into here and build your own intentional community at that soul tribe connection level, at that deeper connection level. So my announcement is that I have made a Patreon page, which is something I had considered multiple times in the past, and honestly just felt like more work to me because of kind of what the perks that come with this. But as soon as we were talking about this, when I was in my, as we call ourselves, like the Council of Elders, we were sitting around and kind of bouncing multiple ideas off each other. And I realized, oh yes, this is that exchange. This is that someone has skin in the game. So if you choose to join this Patreon community, the Spiritual Integration Soul Tribe, as I'm calling it, then you've got to make an energetic investment, and that is in the form of money, and it's $5 a month. That's what the investment is. And the reason that is so important is because of all the things I've mentioned. When you choose to join this community, and there's a little thing there that tells you what I'm asking you to commit to, you have to think about this. Do I want to pay this $5? That's one question. And if so, do I want to commit to this being a space of safety? Because I'm holding the integrity of that as well. Do I want to commit to this being a heart-centered space where I choose as much as possible to stay out of the space of judgments, to stay out of my ego space, to connect on a deeper level? This is not a marketing group. This is not a networking group. I mean, honestly, I've made my best networking connections by finding members of my soul tribe that I connect to. That is the future of networking. That is what my friend Sarah Amos calls feminine marketing. This idea that there's enough for everybody, and that as we hold space for each other, we find out what the strengths are and we share them with each other, right? And so my strength is energy work and the things I'm doing. And then maybe someone else's strength is in, like Rosemary. She teaches about money and money in terms of energy, which I understand. And so what happens is sometimes when you create a space like this, it is actually, if you're in a business, it kind of is helpful, but that is not the purpose of this space. The purpose of this space is to be in a safe space, to connect with people at that deeper level, to learn how to be intentional in community, because we're learning this together. What does that mean? What does that look like? What happens when someone says something that triggers me in this community? How do I react to that? Am I able to respond? Am I able to have a discourse that feels like it's still heart-centered, even though it sort of triggered the fear of the ego? So let's talk a little bit about what's going to happen in this space, this specific space that I'm building. And again, you could use this as a template to build any space you want. I'm just telling you, partly because I want you to join us if you feel called to, but partly just because I'm kind of walking you through the steps of this. Like, how did I arrive at this? Why is it intentional? All of that. So the way Patreon is set up is that as you choose to make your investment, then you're going to receive some perks. And the number one perk is that this is a private community that I am intentionally holding safety in, that I hope you are intentionally holding safety in. And there will be ways to connect and interact in this community that do not exist anywhere else, because it is a container. We are making an energetic container of safety, of depth, of that soul connection. And so there will be opportunities to connect there. So one of the things I have in mind is a periodic check-in, like on Zoom, where we just anyone who wants to hops on Zoom and, how's it going and what's happening in your life and what do you need and how can we support each other? And then we do some energetic holding and support of each other. The very first thing that you're going to receive, and it's not there yet, but it will be, is that rebirthing ceremony I talked about that I did on the first of the year with my DFE goddesses. It was a really powerful ceremony, and I was like, oh, I should share this. And then I realized this could be the first thing that I do on Patreon. So you'll get like a step-by-step, this is how to do this. You'll get the song list I use because it's, of course, sound-based. And you will get your own little kind of DFE activation meditation that's like edited for part of this rebirthing ceremony. So that will be coming, I don't know, in the next week or so. Podcast bonus episodes, maybe once a month. We just do the podcast on Patreon. Live streams, there's opportunities for like Q&A. Some of the live card pulls I've done, I might just only do there. Blog posts, pre-releases of my music or live performances, access to early offerings or discounts. Another thing that's coming is that my prices for group things are going to get realigned. They're probably going to go up. So if you're in the Patreon space, you may get a discount. You may get early access to some of the pilot programs. I've been talking about doing a book group for spiritual integration where we go through each chapter and discuss. That might be something that's only on Patreon or that's discounted through Patreon. So there's a lot of perks and exclusives that you will receive. That is kind of how Patreon is designed. But the intentional community part of it is the focus. This idea that we're building a space of safety. We're calling in our soul tribe. And what do I mean by that? We're going to do that in the meditation today. And I know this is another long episode, so I'm going to wrap this up pretty quickly. But when you are intentional, you are calling energy to you. You're calling energy to be used in a specific way. And so what I realized is that as I did my own work, as I came into alignment with myself and I figured out what I value and I was able to express that, it came into my conscious mind, then I was able to be more intentional about things. Who are my soul tribe? What do they look like? And my soul tribe, again, first and foremost, revolves around safety and support. Safety for everyone, support for everyone, a place where you can be vulnerable and it's not going to be used against you. That's something that happens a lot with people who have had trauma in their background. When they do get vulnerable, then it feels like somebody kind of turns that against them. This is a space where that will not happen. That is my intention. And can I guarantee that? No, because people are people but I can state the intention that the people who come into this space hold the same intention. And as I've done that in my own life, the people who have shown up for me, all these years I was, interacting with, other energy workers and body workers and these people that they were still in that ego space. And again, no, you're never going to get out of that completely, but the more time you spend coming into your body, coming into the heart space, grounding, the deeper opportunity you have for connection. And so when I met my friend Michelle, Brightway Wellness, who I'm now sharing space with, she was the person who helped me kind of solidify that idea in my mind. What do I want in my community? What do I want my community to look like? And so now we're together building community here in Tucson physically. But my goal here is we're moving beyond that space. We're moving into this virtual space. And one of the great things about the virtual space, again, kind of built in that mental space for the most part, but with intention, we can create anything we want in this virtual space. So people from all over the world can decide, I want to be part of the Spiritual Integration Soul Tribe. I commit to holding the safety. I commit to deepening my connection, to coming into my body, and we could do amazing things in this space. The sky is the limit with that. And I think part of the reason it took me so long to get here is because that is, again, when you are being intentional about things, things have to feel right. They have to feel good in your body. They have to feel safe. They have to feel expanded, or at least that's my definition of these things. So as I, kind of little pieces fell into place and I kept saying, oh, I'm going to have a Facebook group, or, oh, I'm going to have, and I will probably have a meetup group. That's a great way to notify people. I mean, I'm not going away from any of the spaces I'm at, but I am creating this opportunity for us to call in our soul tribe. We're calling in energy with intention. And in the meditation today, you can set any intention you want. I am going to verbalize this idea of safety and for the highest good, because to me, these are the building blocks of anything else you want to call in. But you can call in anything you want for your soul tribe. Maybe your soul tribe is connecting, maybe you're calling in like a sacral soul tribe, and I'm talking about the heart space. I mean, honestly, once you're aligned, you're calling in people who relate on any of these kind of deeper levels, but you can personalize this however you'd like. There is something about the intention of calling something in that, again, that's what manifestation is. Being in alignment, connecting on that soul level, because if you're trying to call something in from the ego, it's not going to happen, or it's going to come in a way that feels yucky when it shows up because it came out of fear. It didn't come out of love. It didn't come out of the unconditional source of all that is, which is what you are, which is what your soul is. So when you're aligned in the soul space and you call something in, that is going to show up. And a lot of times it's going to show up in a way that's beyond anything you ever imagined. And one of the reasons that I'm doing this is because what happens when we do this on a larger scale, and it's not just me once a week on my phone, sometimes talking to one or two people and then people listening to the podcast later. What happens when we are all in a space together, whether it's virtual, it doesn't matter. What happens when we all hop on a Zoom, or I do a live stream and we're all there at the same time and we all call something in? What happens when someone needs support? It's making me emotional. It's giving me goosebumps. What happens when we're all on a call and someone needs support and we all call in the support for that person? That is the future. That is the future of humanity. Support, not competition, support, lifting each other up. And I see that a lot spoken about, but again, it's spoken about still from that ego space so much of the time. It's not being aligned. It's not being called in from that soul space, from that intuitive space. So I think the sky's the limit with this. I will continue to kind of mention this. There will be more things coming, but building intentional community is the future of humanity, is how we make change on a systemic level, I think. And so let's start doing it together if you want. Join me. I call in my soul tribe. We're going to do that together in the meditation. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with our spiritual support team, because they always have our highest good in mind. So when we start from that space of highest good, we call in that support. Then when we call it in the physical plane, we're in alignment. And the way energy works, I said I was going to stop talking, but one more thing. The way energy works is that this physical plane is dense. It is a dense plane. And so it takes time for energy to move in this plane. So this is not something that will happen overnight. I'm not expecting to get up tomorrow and having, 10 people in the Patreon group, I was going to say 10,000, but that's a lot of people. This is something that we're going to build over time. That's how building works. That's how energy works. So you call in the energy, you call in the energy, you call in the energy. And 3 months, 6 months, a year from now, you start to see the results of that. The spiritual plane, things happen instantly. But to get into this physical plane, which is where we're living, we are here for a reason. We have to be grounded, and we have to be patient sometimes. And that is, as I've mentioned in the past, not my strong suit, but I'm getting better with it. So I hope you will join me. The link is in the video here. I'll be putting it up on Facebook. It will be in the podcast notes, and I will probably start mentioning maybe every week. I don't know. Join me on Patreon. We're building an intentional community of safety and love. And whoa, just saying that makes me feel expanded. It makes me feel good. It makes me feel like I finally belong somewhere. That's what we want. We want that deep connection. We want to feel like we belong, and we've been hurt so many times. So join me. Let's belong somewhere together. It can change the world. I absolutely believe that. So let's meditate together. So this meditation is about calling in your soul tribe. We're going to start on the spiritual plane with that, because everybody in our soul tribe on the spiritual plane is already there. They're waiting. That's what our spiritual support team is. It's this team in the spiritual realms that has our highest good in mind, that is holding safety and love for us when we can open to that. And a lot of times it takes time because we've been hurt so much on the physical plane. So we're going to start in the spiritual, move to the physical. You can change anything about this. You can specify what you want your soul tribe to look like, how you want to relate to them. I'm going to do what I'm going to call building blocks, safety for the highest good, heart to heart, deep connection. These are the things I'm calling in, but you can call in anything you like. So take a few nice deep breaths in through your nose. Let's use that oxytocin breath, sighing that out, creating safety in the body to start with as a foundation. So as we sigh that breath out, we vibrate the vagus nerve, telling the body that we are safe. Do that at least 2 or 3 times. You can be in any position you like for this. It's going to be fairly active, so if you want to sit up, just make sure you're supported. Have some part of your body contacting the ground if possible. And then just quickly, as we want to get into the meditation, just check in with your body, maybe move a little bit. Any areas that feel a little bit painful or uncomfortable, just, maybe 50% of your capacity or so. Move, shake, just getting the body comfortable, reacquainting yourself with your body if you've been in that mental space for days or weeks or years. Coming out of that attic of the mind space and down into the rest of the house. And don't forget your basement, your cellar, your feet, the low body. My dog is into that. Coming back into the body. Feel that lower part of the body. Feel the part of your body that's contacting the earth, whatever it is, or closest to the earth. And then take another nice deep oxytocin breath and notice if you feel any shift. Notice if anything's changed. Maybe you're just aware of how uncomfortable you are physically, and that's actually progress. If you've been disconnected and you come back into your body, it can feel really uncomfortable. But the more you do this, the less uncomfortable you'll be, the better your body will feel, the safer you will feel, the more you will be able to function from this intentional space of creation instead of just reacting, instead of just being buffeted by that energetic wind that's always around you. So if you'd like, and you're familiar with the practice, you can bring your energetic sanctuary to you. If you've not done this before, just imagine right now that in this room where you're sitting, you're also in the most beautiful, safest space you could possibly imagine. This is your sanctuary. Take a brief moment, kind of look around, visualize what does it look like, but especially notice what does it feel like. This is the safest space you've ever been. Nothing can harm you here. Nothing can enter without your permission. And a lot of us have never experienced that safety in the physical plane. So we start building it in the spiritual realm, and then we bring it into the physical body. So notice how safe you feel here. Maybe notice what it looks like. And then, again, if you're familiar with this, if you've done this before, just invite your spiritual support team in. And if you're not familiar, if you're not comfortable with this, all you're doing is asking for spiritual guidance here. You've got spiritual guides that are here to support you. You can think of them as angels. Sometimes they appear as loved ones we've lost. They can appear as objects. It can just be a feeling. But a lot of times, if you look around where you're at now in your energetic sanctuary, you might feel a presence. You might see something. It might just look like a shape, just kind of the vaguest shape. You might not have a sense of who this is. Know that anyone in this space is here for your highest good, because nothing can come into this space that is not for your highest good. So anything that comes in here now is for your highest good. These are the spiritual beings that are holding space in the spiritual realm of safety for you. These are the unconditional love and light beings that are here to help you, that are here to guide you. When you hear that little intuitive voice, it's coming from this intuitive space. And this intuitive space is really just part of who you are. These are not actually separate beings from you, but they're facets of this big, beautiful source that is really who we are. And it can be helpful to see them as separate from ourselves, to feel like we're receiving this love. Call in your ancestors here. They are a huge team of support that we sometimes overlook, and they are here for your highest good. And sometimes your ancestors, these could be blood relatives that you descended from. These can be what I call energetic ancestors, this lineage of energy that has come through you. This lineage of healers that you've descended from. If you feel like you're called to healing work, just invite them all in. Invite them all here. Call them here. They're your original soul tribe. Your soul is here. Make sure you feel your soul. What is your soul? It's that divine light that we talk about all the time. Call your soul here with intention. I invite my soul into this space. I create my soul tribe from my own soul, from my own light. And then as you're ready, just get a feel for this. Take a minute or two. You can come back to this anytime you like. Your spiritual support team is now here with you. They're in this space. You've not gone anywhere. You're still on earth. You're still in your body. Feel your feet. They're still there. They've come to you. They've come to this space. As we set intention, as we call energy into this physical space to make change in the physical realm, we have support from our spiritual support team right here. They're around us. They're in this beautiful space with us for our highest good, for the highest good of all. So start to think about now, start to envision, who is your soul tribe on this physical plane? Who are the people that you want to interact with? How do they interact with you? How do they relate with you? And I'm going to call in some ideas here. You add whatever you like to this. And if something I'm calling in doesn't resonate, just don't call that into your space. You are in total control of your creation. We are creating here with intention, with energy. We are moving energy into this coherence of intention, of calling something in. That's what intention is. We're calling energy to do our bidding, essentially, with this intention, with this creative flow. So for my soul tribe, and you might say this out loud, and again, you can use you can call in anything you like, or you can just repeat what I'm saying, change it, whatever feels good to you. So at some point, do this so you can say this out loud. If you can't right now, just think it, but do this out loud, and the resonance will reach further. The coherence will be stronger. When we speak, we create. For my soul tribe, I call in safety. For my soul tribe, I call in unconditional love. For my soul tribe, I call in heart-centered relationship. For my soul tribe, I call in non-judgment. For my soul tribe, I call in vulnerability. For my soul tribe, I call in trauma healing and safety in the body. For my soul tribe, I call in groundedness, presence in the physical body. For my soul tribe, I call in intuitive knowingness beyond the ego space. For my soul tribe, I call in a release of fear. Add anything you'd like here. Call in any resonance, any vibration you'd like. And again, you can come back to this. You can tweak this as many times as you'd like. And just before we step into the sound, what I'd like you to do now is hold these things in your space. You might even physically bring your hands together in front of your heart or over your heart. You've called in all these beautiful things for your soul tribe. And as the sound comes in, now call in your soul tribe itself. I call in the people in this world who are ready to join my soul tribe. I call in the people who are ready to hold these intentions with me: safety, unconditional love, release of fear, trauma healing, heart-centered relationship, non-judgment. I call these people to me now. And you can continue to state that out loud through the sound. You can hold that as an intention. You can continue even to call in these attributes that you're looking for in your soul tribe, this deeper connection. I call in deep connection. And again, call in the people now. You might even bring your hands out and you're bringing this energy. I call in the people who are ready to hold this soul tribe space with me. This is a co-creation. I create this space, this container of energy where my soul tribe can meet, can come, can feel safe, can connect at that deep level, heart to heart, without judgment, in love. Ooh, ay, 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 ay. Ooh, ooh, ay, 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 ay. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Say, oh, yeah, oh, yeah, oh, yeah. Say, ate, shoyena. I call my soul tribe to me as we co-create this space of safety and unconditional love and non-judgment and support for each other. Ooh, hi, 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 oh, hi, 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 oh. Chaos enochia, chaos enochia, chaos enochia. Boy, hi, ho, ne, hi, ya, ya. Say out. And one more time with intention. Create your community, create your soul tribe, call in that new, coherent, resonant frequency that is fully aligned with your soul, with your purpose here. You are here for a purpose. And as you align, you create with that intention, with that coherence, and magic happens. I call in my soul tribe, and together we commit to holding a space of safety and unconditional love and non-judgment and support. We commit to grow together, and the ripples of our tribe affect the energy of the entire physical plane. And we're ready. We are ready. Take a nice deep breath in through the nose, sigh it out with that oxytocin breath. Give some gratitude to your spiritual support team for coming into this space with you. Feel their gratitude for you doing this work. They're here to support you in this work. And when you do it, they rejoice. When you do it, they dance, they sing, they celebrate. Feel that now. Feel their gratitude for you and send them some back. And send some gratitude out to this soul tribe you've called in, and pay attention. They may start to show up when you least expect it, so be open. Be ready. Sa-nam. The truth of your identity is that you are a creator. You are made in the image of that which created us all, and you have creative power. When you practice with intention, you harness that creative power. You call that energy into coherence, into harmony. And you can create beauty and love and safety and joy, not just for yourself, but for the world around you, for the highest good of all. As you're ready, just slowly start to wiggle maybe your toes, your wrists and hands, just again, very slowly with reverence, maybe 10-20% of your capacity. Coming back here now, remembering that you're still in your body. We never left. Taking 1 or 2 more nice deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth if you'd like. And as you're ready, you can open your eyes. Thank you so much for joining me. If you're ready to join my soul tribe, you can check out my Patreon page and join the Spiritual Integration Soul Tribe. There is a lot to come in that space. And if you're ready to create your own space, I've given you a template. Do it with intention. Do it with depth. Do it with that highest good in mind. And the sky is the limit for what will happen when we are in intention, when we are coherent and harmonious and aligned. We create entirely new systems, and we can do that together. Have a beautiful rest of your day or evening. Have a beautiful rest of your week, and I will see you next week for Wind Down Wednesdays.